Taking charge and responsibility for your year and destiny. A lot of that comes back to your purpose, how you overcome obstacles, and how you find your way through the challenges that you have. But how do you do that? How do you pull that all together?
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to a Pondering Life episode of the Share.care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own selfish best interest to help others. Today, I'm pondering with Julian Roberts regarding taking charge and responsibility of your year and destiny. G'day, Julian. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Damien. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Very well, thank you. It was a good New Year. It was quiet, but a lot of fun. So in that regard. And yourself, did you get up to much?
I was traveling around the country. I was in the UK. I was up in the north of England. I was in the southwest of England for New Year. Saw friends, saw family. Quite busy, really. So coming back to work for probably a little bit of a rest in some ways.
It gets like that over the holiday period, doesn't it? What's the weather like over in the UK? I mean, here it's been pretty dismal, to be honest, for an Australian summer.
Oh goodness, all right. Well, we've had lots of rain over the Christmas period. But it's also been quite warm. It's unseasonally warm. I mean, it's like 12, 13 degrees, which it should be more about, I think, like 6, 7 degrees at this time of year.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I've heard that, over your way, it's warmer than normal, and where we are, it's certainly much colder. We've only cracked the 30 degrees for a couple of days, and there's been. I even had the fire going a few days ago. It was kind of crazy.
Really? My goodness, that is cold for you.
Yeah, it's not a postcard moment for Australia for our summers, so to speak. And getting into the new year, we're going to talk about taking charge and responsibility for your new year and your destiny. You got any major plans or anything going forward? What's your process?
Well, it's interestingly, I've got quite a big, I say, a plan or a project goal, however you want to term it. I've just finished my master's in psychology in December, and I did a thesis on does authentic leadership promote team resilience? And so obviously for the last 6-7 months, I've been quite deep in the whole sense of team resilience and authentic leadership. And I realized there's little literature and even study actually on team resilience. There's a lot of stuff on personal resilience.
Yeah.
And I do, and the reason I chose those topics, particularly interested in authentic leadership, but also I do a lot of team resilience with the people, clients I work with. And I thought it'd be nice just to dive in a bit more on that. And I've realized actually there's probably a gap in the markets for how to create those resilient teams. And so I'm actually, and I probably will be this weekend, starting to write a book on it. And so using my theses, and on the back of that, and my experience of working with teams, other people's experience as well, because I'm going to sort of chat to people about it, and sort of create I don't know, it'd be a how-to, who knows, that will come out in the end, but it's certainly be about creating resilient teams and helping leaders do that in organizations. I think it's a real need, and it's not just, I'm not just talking a pandemic thing. I think there's always going to be challenges in our organizations, and it's how you face that, not just as individuals but as teams. And so I guess that's my big project for this year, really. It's going to take a lot of energy to do that, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well, because I believe writing a book, you get more out of it yourself than actually what you've written. In terms of the process, is quite powerful. And so yes, I'll be that's the big thing for me, which I know will come also a business tool for me in terms of becoming that thought leader type thing, and have sort of expertise in certain area. So yeah, that's what I'm excited about this year.
That's pretty massive too. I mean, because I know from a change perspective, implementing change for a person on a personal level, one-on-one, is, there's a process for that. But then when you're implementing change for a corporate organization with teams, that's a different ball game, because you're not just dealing with one person. So I can imagine that team resilience itself would be, as you say, there's a big gap. I haven't really seen it. Well, I haven't seen anything on team resilience and creating team resilience. It must be a huge step and a completely, an expanded process. I would imagine some of the principles are the same, but to implement, there's one thing to have principles, it's another thing to implement.
Yeah, and I think and I think because there's an assumption sometimes where people think if you get a load of resilient people together in a team, then you'll create a resilient team, and it doesn't work that way at all. It's in fact, it can be sometimes counterintuitive, because those people are so self-reliant on themselves. You still got to create that sort of team bond, still have the right leadership, still have that sort of psychological safety and everything else that's important. And I think that's what you need to build in a team, and have that focus. But yes, we'll see. I mean, what are your big plans for the year in terms of have you got any sort of things you're happening that you're excited about?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm excited. Similar sort of thing. The book that I've been writing for probably a year and a half, that I haven't progressed as far as I'd like to progress it. I've been talking about it a lot, and I probably should make that an effort. But by the way I'm talking, it's probably not going to be the highest priority on my list.
What's the book about?
It's called Be the Black Hole, Becoming a Force So Powerful That Your Goals Come to You. And it's about setting up your unconscious mind so that you attract your goals to you. And it's something that I tend to do intuitively. And I've got a process for doing that, for setting up your reticular activating system so that you notice things. How to set your beliefs, because a lot of times we believe our beliefs are real. And we don't understand that. Well, certainly for a lot of part of my life, I didn't understand that beliefs were just a thought that I'd repeated multiple times, and therefore it becomes something that's true for me. And so it's understanding that link between what you believe, how that sets your reticular activating system to filter. And so you see you basically see what you want to see, what you set yourself up to see, which means a lot of times there might be things to help you get to your goals much quicker that you miss because your filter's blocking you. One significant change that I made in a thought process was, money's a good example, and this was to do with money. And I was always struggling in the money process, because I'd always have that process, that thought process of you need to spend less than you earn. And to me, that kind of sucked, because I always had a lot of things that I wanted to buy that far exceeded what the income that I had. And then one day, I can't remember how it came about, but I decided to make a mindset shift to earn more than my expenses, or more than I wanted to spend. So I literally changed my belief overnight, or instantly, because you can do that. And I just said, okay, from now on, I'm going to earn more than I spend. And that was as simple as that. And it was amazing how often, whenever I had unknown expenses or things like that, and I'm not talking small expenses. There's one time where my monthly expenses increased by 40 grand in that month, but that income just turned up. Wow. Through, and it was interesting how that process was there. However, if I had been following my previous methodology of thinking of earn less than I spend less than I earn, I would have missed that, because there were subtle little nuances that I paid attention to that I would have missed before. And so it's a book about that. It's about finding how to basically attract things into your life and to do things fairly easily. And coming back to the money side of things, having money and having wealth, the rules for that are very simple. One is, in far as earning money, it's about adding value, either as an employee. There's a was a study, I can't remember where the study was, but it was a study that was done that showed that I think it was increasing the amount of time that you work. If you're an employee, if you work an extra hour a week, it actually results in an increase in pay by about 40% increase compared to other people. And especially today in the labor and skill shortage environment we're in, that kind of makes sense. If you just do that little, it's like that old story of the two people walking in the jungle and a lion jumps out and one puts on the running shoes and the other one says, well, you can't outrun the lion. And he said, I don't have to outrun the lion. I just got to outrun you. And today, it's not that difficult to be just that little bit better, but the rewards you get far outweigh that little bit of extra effort that you're putting in. So from an earning perspective, that process is not hard. It's not hard to put in that little bit of extra effort. And if you work smarter, not harder, you can actually do that. You can shorten the time frame that it takes to do that. But how many of us do that? I know for a lot of my life I didn't. Now I'm always looking for how to do things as quickly and easily as possible. And then having wealth is a similar process. It's have a surplus of what you spend. So in my case, earn more than you spend, invest that surplus and reinvest the income from that surplus. And that's a pretty simple set of rules when you look at it. But how many people do it? And how many people, when you compare that to how many people want wealth and how many people follow that instruction? And this is part 2 of the book, is linking your identity to your goals. Because if you have a set of goals and your identity is not linked to that, you'll fight against it. And I think this is my quote, but it's unlike a real wall, barriers in your mind are only there because you choose them to be there. So they're easy to get rid of. You just get rid of the barrier and away you go, but you've got to recognize it. So it's a book about that process. I guess partly too, the reason I'm not hugely motivated about writing it is I'm doing it, and I haven't been highly motivated by others to want this knowledge at this stage. But maybe I'll get there. So.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a fantastic book and something that probably would really help people, because I agree with you. I think something on the money side, people go into that mindset of budgeting, don't they? And that's that mindset of, I only spend what I've got, as opposed to have that mindset of earn more than I spend, which is it's just a slight nuance of a change, but it makes you look for opportunities. And as you take, it's your RAS, your reticular activating system, starts to look for things, and it's that whole confirmation bias, isn't it? That's what it is. You're literally setting yourself up to look for ways of earning more money in your business or as an employee, whatever it may be, and that's quite powerful. And I think people need to hear that, and it sounds like you've obviously thought it through and given people a process, which I think always helps as well in terms of how to implement that in your life. And so sounds like well, it's up to you, but it'd be worthwhile to help other people with that. And it's
as much as I had a Catholic upbringing, and I say that I'm not Catholic anymore, but because I can't feel guilty, I think you're starting to trigger those little guilt.
I'm not making me feel guilty. I think it's some. Well, to turn it around,
it's a good thing. I'm not complaining. It's a good thing.
It's almost making if you say about adding value, to me, that what you've shared is bringing value. Some people have heard this will go, okay, but if you've got a book about that and a process, and people can really dig into that helps people. And you're a person who wants to help people. That's why you do the podcast, why you do what you do. And so to me, that it's just an extension of your purpose and who you are. And I suppose it's there we go. I'll leave it with you.
You actually, and that's part of what we were talking about, taking charge and responsibility for your year. And that's where, how do we take responsibility? Because I know there's a couple of other things that I'm working on that I really have. I mean, we're only at, what are we, the 6th of January, and I've put in tremendous amount of effort already since the start of the new year. And one of the projects working on is helping one of the impoverished countries in the world. I won't get into the detail yet because it's still in its infancy, but there's been a lot of high-level talk from governments and about how to help. And I'm working with one of the leading human rights activists in this space. And as she put it, she said there's a lot of talk about at that high level, we need to do this, but there's no practical application. And so we're at the ground level now, working on some practical ways of helping people, putting together some business plans that they can follow, putting together some marketing tools they can use to help create business, to help generate income, and showing them those steps. And that's something certainly, and using some of these tools that I'm talking about, with that's within the book, to help these people move forward. And I guess when we're talking about, again, taking charge and responsibility, I'm very passionate about that, and maybe we need that extra passion. Do you find that you have to find that passion, or it just comes naturally? How do you motivate yourself to do these things?
Yeah. For me, I always, whatever I do, not always, in most cases, in terms of goal setting or activity I go and try and do, I try and embed them or certainly link them out of my purpose. And so, my purpose is to unlock, leadership potential of 100,000 leaders.
Yeah,
that's sort of in a shorter version of that. And so, the book I'm writing does that. It will unlock leadership potential, through team resilience. That is part of what I do. And so when I feel I'm sort of getting a bit like, I don't know, losing motivation, energy, passion I'll go back to my purpose and go, okay, how does this link to this? And use that as my source of inspiration, energy, and ideas as well. And I find purpose for me is quite important. I do a lot of it with a lot of clients, is getting back to that purpose, or knowing your purpose. Often people don't know it. They're sort of doing things, and it is done in a purposeful way, and but they don't know the clarity behind that. And once you've got the clarity, then when those shiny new things come, those little projects that come, that looks really interesting. We all get them. And that's, it's like, before you go yes and embrace it, you go, okay, will this get me closer to my purpose? And obviously, purpose is usually bigger than you. It's bigger than a year. It's almost unattainable, but it's big.
Yeah.
Then you go, well, this get me closer. Then yes, and if it does, and you've got the expertise, time, all that sort of stuff, then actually I'll do it. And my own podcast came out of my purpose as well. That was about helping organizations thrive, and that's what I do. And through unlocking leadership potential, and that was born out of the same sort of purpose. And so I've been doing it 2.5 years, and that's what keeps me going. As part of that, I enjoy the conversations, but the core of it is I'm helping other people through my conversations I have with these leaders, CEOs, various people. And so again, it's having that sort of highlight, clarity of purpose, and then, but not just forgetting about it. It's like any people do business plans and then they put it in a drawer and don't look at it again. Keep reminding yourself of that purpose. When you're feeling a little bit like, can't bother today, go back to your purpose, because that's what inspired you. That there's lots of energy in it. There's lots of words that will inspire you again, and ponder on it, reflect on it, think about it. How does that work? And it's a good way of being creative as well. How do I sort of go next steps? I use my purpose as a way of finding those ideas and solutions as well.
How did you find your purpose? Because I know when I ask a lot of people, what do you want? Just asking that question, what do you want? A lot of people go, oh, I don't know. And they're kind of, even if they do say something, I noticed that a lot of people are not too sure about it. Was there a process that you went through to find what your purpose was?
It was a mixture of me just realizing what my passion was, what I really enjoyed, what I was good at. So there's those sort of things coming together. And what really, when I was involved in that process of that passion, of that purpose, how energized I was. And so I started to sort of do some reflecting on that. And it only came, to be honest, since I've been working for myself in the last sort of 5.5 or sort of 6 years. Before that, I didn't really know, I would say. And so I sort of I guess in this context, a late developer of knowing my purpose. Really,
I think we
I
all
was
are,
in.
aren't we? I know for me, it was like,
Well, I don't know. I've got. I know some. I'm trying to get my daughters to get clarity on. Even my eldest daughter, she was just a little bit confused about what she's doing on this, and I said about purpose, and I recommended to get try Simon Sinek's book on starting with why,
yeah,
which is a good place to start. And so she's bought the book actually. She's going to start reading it,
yeah,
and she's 25, so I feel she's got a bit of a head start on this
yeah.
knowing your purpose piece. So it was through that, and also through I've got a coach. And through that process of meeting with my coach and talking through my sort of passions and her asking me questions and her sort of delving and sort of probing and everything else, got me to this place of what I really like. I love. It's interesting. I love like the extreme aspects of people's goals. I love working with people who've got these like absolute massive goals. They don't phase me. I don't know why. I just love extremity. I know I do work with athletes as well, and so I love that sense of I had a group of ladies who wanted to break a world record to row around Great Britain, and that really
Wow.
excited me. It's like,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's a
impressive.
massive goal. I've had a client who wanted to take his business from 1 million to 100 million in 10 years. And it's funny because they sound absolutely ludicrous goals, but I just love that extremity as well. So, but yeah, it's been through just realizing my passion, realizing through interaction with my coach, but then also asking other people what they perceived me and saw me and what they see me, how I interact as well. So that was really quite helpful as a process. But yes, I think it's really important. I mean, have you sort of? I'm sure you have because you're quite purposeful, so you must know your purpose. And how did you find yours?
Yeah, it was an interesting process. Yeah, I'm certainly in that category of the late developer. I floated between my purpose was to avoid doing things I didn't want to in my younger life. Like I was at school and I didn't want to be at school, and my dad said, and I got to the stage where I was actually going to class and literally sitting there doing nothing, which is I think that's an effort in itself to not do anything at all. I'm not recommending that for anyone listening because it doesn't help you later on. But it was a funny transition because, and I'm not sure how much my parents breaking up and a couple of factors. For example, like when I was younger in primary school, when I come home, my mum would always give us. I had a sister who was a year younger than me, and we'd come home and she'd give us at least another hour of homework. So we'd do school, we'd come home, we'd do another house homework. So getting to school and when we were studying at school became relatively easy because we were so far ahead. When we were doing the classes, it became relatively easy. And I wonder if it was a combination of that combined with my parents breaking up, because my parents broke up when I was starting year seven. And so we there was obviously some turmoil in the family and things happening there. And I know in year nine, my grades were still relatively good. So we separated. We separated. We moved from where our dad lived in the city for about a year. So we separated from our dad. And I don't recall much about that from the perspective of, and sorry, Dad, as you listen to, I don't recall missing you. So in that sense, but I think we still had some contact. But I don't recall that process that much, and maybe it's because I have blocked it out. And yeah, so around year nine is when things started to slide. I look back at my reports, and there was some really good grades. Still getting straight A's in a number of subjects. English wasn't a good subject for me, but that was probably because I wasn't a good speller. And back in those days, we didn't have computers and word processors. We had to write it out by hand. And if you made a mistake, you had to do the whole lot again, which maybe that's my writing struggle. Because we had
Possibly,
to,
yeah.
it could be this unconscious thing that which is ironic because I've got all the chapters effectively written in the book. So all the structures there, all the details there. I just got to, not all the detail, but all the structure, all the theory, all the research is there. I've just got to put some stories around it. So maybe that is that unconscious struggle. But then, yeah, so I got to later in life, into school. And for whatever reason, I just decided I didn't want to study. And And my dad wasn't really happy with that and said I wasn't allowed to leave school because I wanted to leave school unless I had a job. Well, a couple of weeks later, the Army recruitment people came around. And I'm like, cool, I can get out of school. So I joined the Army. And then this is where my process of finding who I am, I guess, was through that. Then I'm in the Army running around and I'm with guns and stuff like that, running around in Australia, we only have one bush. It's the bush. You know, it's this time running around all these trees and camping. And I was like, I don't really like this idea of spending the next minimum. I was signed up for 4 years, minimum 4 years, running around, camping in dirt, sort of thing. And I knew, I think I was mature enough to know that I wasn't going to get there were certain good positions like signals and positions like that, which would kind of seemed like cushy positions. And if anyone didn't get those positions, they went to infantry. And then in that process, there was one particular job no one was going for. And I had to think about that. And the job was a chef's position. And as I was thinking about that, my first thought, I was 18, is women like guys that can cook. So it was like, so there's my motivation. Didn't want to run around the bush and girls that would like cooking. So I joined the cooking corps, whatever it was called then. And I went there. And while I'm in the cooking school, as we're getting close to the end, they asked one of the guys in my class, did he want to go to Perth? And I happened to be near him when he was asked that question, and he said no, he didn't want to go. He came back. He just came from Perth and didn't want to go back there. And I just said, Perth's a long way from home. I'll go to Perth. So I said, I'll go to Perth. And they said, yeah, sure, if you can pass the psychological test, you can go. Now, I didn't give a complete I didn't know what this psychological test. I didn't even give it a thought. I just went, yeah, whatever. It turns out it was for a posting to the SAS. So I've ended up getting.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I've done these psychological tests, and they go, "Oh, you passed," and off you go to Perth. And I was like, "Oh, cool." And I turn up, and I'm at the SAS, and I got to do everything the SAS does. Plus, I learned to cook as well. So it's kind of like Stephen Scarl in Under Siege, you know. And it wasn't probably that was probably most of my life was, after I got out of the Army, I was fluffing around and friends said, oh, you can earn a lot of money on the mine site. So I did that, got homesick, come home. And then I'm not sure why, but I think it came from, companies having a mission statement. And I thought, well, what if I had a mission statement? So I spent a bit of time working out what would my mission statement be if I had a mission statement. And I finally chose what it would be. And that's why when I work with people now, and certainly when I work with people in companies, I don't ask, what do you want? I ask, what do you choose? Because I spent most of my time going, what do I want? I don't know. But when I actually switched and said, what do I choose? It's sort of like the change in word opened up a whole new dynamic of actually, I have the power. I can choose. I feel like He-Man, I have the power. And and so I played around with it, and I came up with my mission statement, which is I enjoy life and share in the joy of others. I learn something daily that increases my ability to overachieve and confidently and compassionately act for my values of honesty, excellence, and understanding. And that became my mission statement that drives me. But then I thought about that some more, and I said, well, that's more of a high-level principle of how I act. It's not what I'm doing in life. So this is where, coming back to what you're saying is, what's your purpose? I wrote out the questions as, how do I choose to make the world a better place? And I thought, well, what is my way of doing that? And so what I wrote at the time was, I was married at the time. I said, I'm a wonderful husband to a beautiful, kind, intelligent wife and an amazing father to my son, Benjamin. I share strategy and technique from my global conglomerate of companies. There's a presupposition there, which have an underlying process that improve efficiency in all their operations and focus on increasing the added value to their clients and focus on disrupting the current norms. And I share fun advice on how to build strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. So in a way, that became my purpose. I reframed the question as to how do I choose to make the world a better place, giving it a very specific outcome that I was working to achieve. And it was in those 3 areas. I wanted it to be about family. I wanted it to be about improving the way that we do things, being about innovation, and I want it to be fun and again connecting other people to enjoying the relationships with others. So that's the process I went through. I don't know if that's helpful to listen.
Yeah, I think it is, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think purpose is not just a work thing. It's all parts of your life, and it's interesting because I talk about unlocking leadership potential, but in essence, it's all about unlocking potential. And 6 years ago, part of that was my wife and I went on the journey of becoming foster carers, and that was all about unlocking potential in an individual and giving somebody an opportunity. And we've been fostering now for nearly 4 years. And we've seen this. I call her my daughter, actually, so I don't refer to her as a foster child as such. It's not. So she's now thriving, and and obviously fostering is a challenge, and it's not always easy. And there's moments, but when I have those moments where it is a bit tricky, I go back to why did we do this, and it was to give an opportunity, unlock some potential, and again, it's your purpose and helps you go through those tough times, and I think that's where people often flounder in life. They suddenly hit against a brick wall. You're always going to hit a bump in the road, or whatever metaphor you want to use, and some people get completely thrown by that. And the key thing is to stop and go, okay, why am I on this journey? And that goes back to the why, the purpose, and then that gives you this is why I'm doing this, because I'm trying to get to where I'm trying to get to. And yes, it is a bit tricky. And then, okay, let's look at my purpose and how can I then navigate around this? What inspiration can I get? What ideas can I get? And that's why I think it's really quite fundamental to knowing it in some shape or form. It doesn't have to be in a massive, big dialogue. It can be a very short phrase. And I had a client come to me recently, and he wanted to switch from being sort of working in the workplace and become something else. It's almost a career change, really. And he had some ideas on what those career change was, and he was quite specific on that. And I thought, oh, interesting. So what we did, I did some what I call purpose work, which I think he found a little bit almost like he was going backwards. I was almost dragging him back through this process of. It was like, I just want to know how to do this, and I was like, well, let's just get back to what you really what's driving that. What's the insights?
Yeah, if the foundation's not right.
Well, yeah, and we did, and we went. I do a process through NLP called logical levels, which is a really helpful tool.
You want to expand on that, because the logical levels part? Because I understand because I've studied neurolinguistics, but can you explain it for some of the audience that may not have?
Yeah, it was developed by Dilts. I think my memory on that, right? Yes, Dilts, and it's I suppose a way of slicing you down from the external, which is the environment. And then it goes into sort of your skills and behaviors, how you act in terms of within that environment, and then starts to look at, I'm trying to remember now, the sort of things like your identity, your purpose. It almost takes you from the outside in. Yeah, that's how I perceive it. And it's a process where you start people on the outside from the environment. How they're performing at their best, what environment would they be in? And that's the phrase I would use to someone and say, if you're performing at your best, where would you be, basically? Yeah. And if you're performing at your best, how would you be acting, and what's your behaviors? And if you perform at your best, what are the values, what are the beliefs that you'd be believing? And it starts to unpick those deeper subconscious things that we all have. And then you say, if you perform at your best, what would your identity be? Which starts to create this little form of who you are, and people always get that close. And then the final one is, if you're performing at your best, what would be your mission, purpose, whatever, they're interchangeable. And then you almost go from the outside in, and then they get this little form of words or ideas, and then you take them back out again through the process. And it's always interesting when they come back out. There's slightly different nuances of when they've gone back into their core. and back out. And that's really helpful. Although some people find it really weird, the process sometimes. Sometimes I do it in a conversational way rather than in standing up and moving around the room, which is a normal process I would normally do.
Yeah.
But yes, so I would take him through that, and I did that. This guy, and he got a lot of clarity on what his purpose was, which didn't change so much the outputs. It did a little bit of what he was thinking, and so, but it energized him for the short term as well, because I think he was always thinking, I'll do this when my career change is this, and actually I said, your purpose is for now. It's always there. It's not just for when you career change. It will give you clarity on what career change you should do, because you'll go back to your purpose.
Yeah.
But what it did for him, it gave him real clarity on his day job now, why he does things, and it empowered him. It gave him energy. It inspired him again, and he almost lost his love for it. And so he got this sense of excitement about what he was doing now, not just the career change he was going to do in the next few years. So yes, that's what I did, and that was really sort of helpful. And I think it's important to, I say, get that clarity if you can, and say work with somebody is always helpful. I think it's good to have somebody facilitate that process. You can do it on your own. You can read a book, say on Simon Sinek, starting with why. You can go through various things on the internet to help you get to your purpose, but certainly working with somebody can really help you.
Yeah. And how did you find, because with finding your purpose and, going through that process, I know from my perspective, I mean, first, before I even thought about it, well, I'll take out that period where I hadn't thought about it yet, because if you don't know that you don't know, it's pretty hard to work with it. But once I found that process, part of me was also a little bit influenced by what other people might be doing. I had a massive shift because I think we've all been there where we've had, someone that we've looked up to, and there's people, famous people that we've said, oh, we want to, or successful people, successful / famous people, like I want to be like, might be like Steve Jobs or someone like that. They become an inspiration for you. And I found this process of wanting to be like someone else. And then for some reason, I'm not sure why, but it was quite early in my journey where I said, actually, no, I want to be the Damian Andrews. And it was a massive mindset shift from my perspective, where I began to move away from what others might think to what I thought was important for me. And I just wonder, from your perspective, is that something you've personally experienced, and other people you may have worked with? Is that a similar sort of thing where people are going, well, what will others say? Or do I wanting to be liked and not wanting to do something? How much of that do you need to let go and just go, well, this is the path I'm going to go on? Part of it might have been linked to, I had a little motivational poster, one of those small ones on my desk that said, don't go where the path may lead, go instead where there's no path and leave a trail. And maybe that's what helped me make that shift. And because literally, I really don't care what other people think about my purpose. It is where I'm going, and I will align myself with people that are like that, and people are not. Do you find that can be a barrier for people, is to worrying about what other people think?
I think so. I mean, for years, I probably met people's expectations in what I was doing, because I was in a sales roles, sales leadership roles, predominantly in my career in the food industry, and I was pretty good at it, and quite effective. And I think I look back. It's easy to look back on things, isn't it? At times, when you're thinking, I wasn't entirely happy with what I was doing. It didn't really fit what I was doing, but I was doing it because I was in it, and you almost feel trapped because that's what your skill is, that's what gives you money, and you get to a certain level, and it's very difficult to sort of break out of that. And I think we all love to do that. And I suppose I just met the expectations. I was a sales leader for a big organization, and I had to do what that sales leader has to do, type of thing, and probably didn't do enough of my own thing, which I think probably because I probably wasn't as true to myself as I could have been. And I talk about authentic leadership. I don't think I was probably being as authentic as I should be. And I was probably just mirroring the culture, my boss, all that sort of stuff to try and, in essence, probably people please, I guess you could call it that. But it was not wanting to be who I really was. And it's interesting when you're truly who you are, then you are the most effective of who you are. And that's the when we're trying to put a mask on, and we all do it to a little bit, but when you do it a lot, you're doing it with a lot of energy, and you don't have as impact as you'd liked. And it's interesting when I do reflect on my career and look at the moments when I was what I would say was performing at my best. And this was part of me discovering my purpose and discovering what I wanted to do into a new career, which was quite a big challenge for me to jump from anyway, is that when I was working with individuals and helping them understand their sort of development needs, and then helping them, supporting them, and then seeing them sort of take flight, taking an individual who was, I don't know, had some sort of behaviors were just hindering him, and then me identifying and working with them in a coaching sort of leadership style, and then seeing them just change and being empowered. Just remembered the delights I got from that was just immense, more than just hitting a sales target or a profit target. And that's when I reflect, was actually, that's what I love doing. That's it. It's not the sales bit. I was good at the sales bit, and at moments I enjoyed it, but it was the people bits. And that's when I thought, actually, that's a coach. And that's what got me to realize I needed to be a coach. And in fact, I've always been a coach.
Yeah.
I just was a coach trying to fight breakouts, and I had a coaching style naturally, which almost felt, I remember somebody telling me, "Oh, you need to do this, tell them this, tell them that." And I was like, that just doesn't resonate with me at all. I don't tell people.
Yeah.
I inspire people. I, ask them questions, get them to feel motivated. And that was always my style anyway. So coaching was, for me, was a perfect fit because of what I'd always been doing. And so, yes, I think I'd tried to fit. And it was only through, my last sort of role where I was in a toxic organization that, gave me the impetus to jump, basically. And
it's amazing how that works, isn't it?
It is, and it was two things. It was that, and at the time, my wife and I were looking to foster as well. So those two things sort of collided, and I wanted some more flexibility to help with the whole fostering as well, and sort of to support the foster child, but also my wife. And so, yeah, and then that's when I went, what do I do? And then that's when I started reflecting on it, and then realized, actually, this is what I like doing. And I took the leap, and we're here today. But sometimes we need those moments. I think, and that's another thing to think about when you do get those difficult things in life. And this is what I do now. And I was talking to my daughter the other day about it, and I always say, look for the wisdom in that moment.
Yeah.
What's the? I don't use the words about what's the universe telling you. I just look for the wisdom in that moment. What's it telling you? Why is that difficult? Is it something you need to pursue and push, or is it something you need to think, actually, I need to pursue something else? And that's for me. And I think the wisdom when I had the sort of toxic organization, and then obviously the whole sort of wanting to foster as well came to light. The wisdom was I needed to jump and go forward into something and go towards something. So it wasn't running away from the toxic thing. And that I always said to a lot of people, don't run away, run towards things. If you're running away from something, you're looking behind, you don't know where you're going, really, you're going to trip over. So always make sure you exactly. So run towards something as best you know at that time what that might be, and it's just far more positive. It's far more engaging. It's far more inspiring. Sometimes it's the moment that the initial challenge may feel like you want to run away, but actually think about the wisdom and think, okay, what can I run towards though to keep it more positive? And I think that's what I've learned a lot more of now. So yeah, so even now when I when you're developing business and you think there's some difficult things, or you don't get a client or something, like whatever it is, I try and not always try and stop and think, okay, well, what's the wisdom in this? What's going on here? And just take a time to reflect. And I don't think we do enough of that in life. We don't stop enough, and we just race on to, we didn't get the thing, let's move on to the next thing. And we actually I'll just stop for a moment and sort of take some time out. And so, yeah, that's what I've done. But yes, I've definitely tried to meet people's expectations an awful lot of time in my career. And, even in sometimes in early days of coaching, you always feel this need to not impress, but perform and everything else. But actually, you're best when you're not in that performance mode, because performance mode is just an act.
Yeah.
And I've learned just to be, and it's taken a while, because obviously come from a sales background, it's very performance driven, and targets and everything else. And I've, in the early days of coaching, it was very much, right, I've got this person in front of me, I need to get them to this place and all that, and they've got to go away and hit their outcomes and goals and da 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 da. Now I'm very much almost very less, not really focused on outcomes anymore. I'm focused on the process, and sometimes people struggle with that, because obviously I deal with a lot of high performers who are very goal driven and everything else, but actually focus on the process, because actually, which I don't think people realize, you have no control over the outcome. People think they do, but they don't.
No.
But you have control of what you can do in the moment, and the process, and what you can execute on, and those next steps. That's what you have control of. But you don't have control on the ultimate outcome. And don't worry yourself about it. Just do the process piece, and the outcome will come, or other outcomes that you didn't realize will come as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, what I've noticed in knowing you is, I mean, I've only known you a short period of time, so I haven't known you from your previous background, but certainly noticed knowing you, you're very good at asking questions, and very thought-provoking questions. And I want to come back to that point where you're talking about you're in this role of and not liking, and you've been this pleaser, and you've gone through several roles, and eventually got to the point where you went, it was a toxic environment which effectively pushed you out, or gave you the motivation to move out. And I'm wondering, because we're at the start of the new year, we're talking about, I mean, what's common here is setting New Year's resolutions, and I had a big think about that coming into the new year, going, setting New Year's resolutions, and I hadn't had any, because I have a number of goals or outcomes that I want to achieve, and via, as you say, the process. It's like I've got this outcome, but I'm not exactly sure. I've got this, I want to, as I said, one of my things is how to make the world a better place, to share fun advice on how to build strong, healthy, inspiring relationships. So as far as a SMART goal goes, that's not really meeting the criteria, but it is an intention, which is what I'm aiming for. Now, and so because I had these things that my intentions that I'm working towards, I didn't really have anything new that I wanted to add to the list. And then having a conversation with someone, I'm not sure how it came up, but it was about listening. And it was one thing I went, that's something I can do this year. I can actually focus more on listening, because you mentioned that before, where, these sales roles, you're there, you want to talk, you want to get your point across. And a lot of these people that are high achievers, they're going gung-ho, and they do that, and they keep going. And I was in that category. I was just going gung-ho, not really listening to what was going on around me or myself. And I wonder, from your perspective, was that a shift for you as well? Was it this state of, okay, I'm going to listen more? Because I've noticed in listening and asking questions, especially, just important questions, but listening to what they're going and asking people questions about that has been much more powerful than me trying to present to a person or, do that. What's your experience there?
Interestingly, because when I got into sales, I'm trying to think how, I think I just wanted an opportunity to sort of, I didn't want to work in an office, and I like being out and about, and I wanted freedom. I was quite entrepreneurial, and a sales role fitted all that, and I like working with people, and so, but I never saw myself as what I would call a typical salesperson. I remember going to conferences with people, and they would all be giving it large, and and everything else, and I really wasn't. But the one thing I noted this quite early on, I was quite good at listening, and I was always. I remember this manager teaching me about selling is almost like, rather than just firing a load of sort of bullets at somebody with the information, she would say, ask questions, listen, and then redirect what you're going to target and where you're going to aim. So almost like what you're going to put in that sort of bullet, so to speak, and where you're going to aim at. And she, which is very simple, very obvious, but surprisingly, a lot of salespeople don't do that. They just come firing with their thing. And so I remember when I did medical sales, so selling pharmaceuticals, which is far more difficult because you're changing people's mindsets as opposed to what they prescribe. They're not always buying something from you. Yeah, there's an element of they might buy some drugs, but you want them to then, when somebody comes in with an ailment, you want them to recommend your drug as opposed to somebody else, which is a harder sell in some ways than just taking an order. Yeah. And so I did a lot of listening, and I noticed that I didn't talk a lot when I was selling with people. I would ask questions, and so I naturally had this question listen. Yeah. Anyway, and I found that to be quite powerful, and also I was quite comfortable with silence as well, because obviously, typical salesperson, there's a bit of a silence, and I do it with salespeople, and they talk to me. I just go quiet, and then they'll automatically fill the void. Yes. And
that's the rule when you close, isn't it? When you close, shut up. The next person that speaks gets a sale.
Exactly. So I used to use silence a lot, and so it's quite comfortable with that. But what I didn't do, which is I suppose my reflection really is, I didn't listen enough to myself in terms of, I was reasonably self-aware, I think, but I don't think I truly listened to myself of how I was feeling, thinking, was this right for me? Should I do something else? I was quite good at what I was doing, but I think there was, this bubbling of this sort of coachy type person, and I don't think I listened to that earlier enough. I think back to certain aspects of certain roles. I remember doing some project with an organization. We're doing some training. I was working with another marketeer, and we did this whole development piece. And I got suddenly excited about it. It was nothing to do with selling. It was nothing to do with what I was doing. We were all embraced some sort of senior leaders to do some development of other people in the organization. We did a whole conference on it. And I remember I was buzzing with it. This is brilliant. And I would teach them how to be able to, and I was got more excited about that than just, winning new customers or winning new business. And it's interesting how that was there. And I didn't realize at the time why that was exciting me and why I was getting so sort of passionate about it. So I think we need to listen to ourselves a bit more, and listen to other people clearly, and that's important and respectful, and you learn a lot from that. But I think find places, and I only discovered this probably about 10 years ago, where you reflect best. I go and walking in the forest, or go run in the forest, or it's just where I reflect. And often I'll go and just record voice notes to myself, or I'll just get some revelation out walking. And so I think with the coaching process with people, that's a good way of people stopping and thinking. Often people don't stop and think. Certainly busy executives, they just one meeting to the next, one project to the next. And I think it's important to stop, to pause, to reflect and process life, and not just in a sense of understanding yourself more and what's next, but also in helping your mental well-being. I think often people just don't process enough, and then just carrying all this, and it just builds up into stress, doesn't it? And then they just explode, and something else like a burnout will just take them out and cause them to stop, because ultimately your body will go, right, that's enough. Yeah. I need to take some time out here.
But how do you encourage people to do that? You obviously take time out, and you've got a routine where you take time out for yourself. You mentioned going for a walk in the forest, that kind of thing. For me, similar sort of thing. I'm actually a big listener to what's called epic music. So things that there's a well, it's not a group. There's two guys that started a company to write music for ads, essentially, called Two Steps from Hell. It was actually based on a nightclub called Two Steps from Heaven. They thought it would be a good marketing tool, and now they do a lot of music for things like Avengers and so big scale. But it's really, I find it really, really powerful to listen to and inspiring, and similar sort of thing. Like when my son and I get in the car in the morning when I take him to school, we have a routine where he wants to listen to. It's the soundtrack from Wonder Woman 1984, the Blue Monday
Really?
remake, and then there's the theme from King Arthur. So this is the same routine. He's got two songs from games that he likes to play that we've downloaded. They're really powerful, and then it usually follows on with the Tron Legacy soundtrack, and we follow that routine on every day when he same thing when he gets in, and I find that for me is a space to I find it uplifting and motivating, but at the same time it allows my thought processes. Well, my thoughts to process the thoughts. It's not just having the thoughts and running through this routine. So it's actually spending a time in a really heightened state, but in a heightened state of so it's almost like a meditation, but in a pumped up meditation. It's like being in a Tony Robbins meditation, so to speak, to put it that way, in a way where it's maybe that's not the best example, but it's I find that's a way for me that I found to be really reflective. But I find that my mood is in a state where I actually come up with a lot of ideas in those moments. But how do you get someone, like, because you've worked with a lot of people, bringing them into that space? How do you get people to go, hey, you've got this busy thing, you're doing busy, but you actually need to stop. And it's like the story of the woodcutter, the two woodcutters, and one keeps stopping, but at the end of the day, the one that kept stopping has cut way more wood. And when they go, well, how did you cut so much wood? It was every time I stopped, I sharpened the axe. How do you get people to take that time? How do you motivate them to? Because for me, it's just like it's something I must do. I must just in my day have moments where I take time to reflect. Today was an example. We spent all morning working on a project with a partner of mine. We finished it. So we started at 8:30. We went hard probably until 2-ish. So no breaks, just straight through, pumping out material. We got finished. We went down and as bad as this is, we had some KFC. And then I come home and I kind of reflected, did a bit of literally just chilled out on my couch and went over some of the stuff we did, but in a reflective way as opposed to developing new things. Then I jumped on the cross trainer for half an hour, had a shower, and then I've jumped on the podcast this discussion with you. So I made the next 3 hours were literally no new information, and I wasn't looking at emails or anything like that. And so that I always make sure I have that process. How do you get people to recognize that's important?
I think when they're going through the process of coaching, they start to realize that actually this planned diary time with me, where somebody's going to literally do a lot more listening than perhaps most people would do anyway. And they realize actually that they're actually an opportunity to think. And I think it's that revelation, actually stopping, and obviously the coaching session helps them reflect, because there's quite a reflective place at times. It can be quite a challenging place at times as well, but they realize actually there's some real value in this. And I always, with that, when they realize that happens, if they're not in that place already, they get like a bit of a thirst for it and a bit of a, oh wow, this is really good. I've had a chance to stop, think. Somebody's facilitating it, obviously, and asking me questions, and I'm there with somebody else that creates an accountability, so the process works. But they get a little bit of a, oh wow, just by stopping, mulling over things, some reflecting on things, actually I get clearer, I get sharper, I get more effective. And so they see the reward, the benefits of it. And then I always encourage them anyway outside the process of that, because obviously a lot of stuff within coaching, it happens outside of the actual session as well. It's not all about the session. The session is like the sort of the kickstart of it all, and it will start to smolder. And that's how I always think, things will happen. And often when they come back and they go, oh, I was thinking this and something, and then off they went. I remember one very small example. I had a lady I was coaching, and she was she had to take some medication. She had to take an injection halfway through the process. She was pregnant and everything else, and so we had this conversation, and then she went off for like 5 minutes off from the screen, came back, and she got these revelations in those 5 minutes. And she just sat there and she did this injection and everything else, and she probably just was thinking, and it was quite powerful. And she's like, I said, well, that's you. We start the process of reflecting, and now you're reflecting on your own, and just look at what you got from that. And so that really inspired her. It's like, wow, I just got all this, got all that, and so I always encourage people to go and find what will help them reflect. Sometimes it is loud music, sometimes it is energetic. It doesn't have to be a very quiet place, so to speak, externally. As long as you are quiet inside and you can process life, running on a treadmill can do it. In terms of when I used to do a lot of running, I'm physically exercised, but actually I'm just pondering on things as I go. But I'm doing stuff. I'm looking outside. I'm observing. I'm saying hello to people as I go. So I'm not inactive. I'm not just sitting there in a chair and just, like humming to myself and trying to reflect and forcing myself to reflect. As soon as you start to force yourself,
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It's just actually just do something that is you enjoy, you relax, and it can be a physical exercise. It could be sitting there. It could be just having some nice music on. It could be sitting inside. Whatever it is that you find that does it. Often walking is quite effective. I think people can. It's not too active, not too energetic, but it actually is just quite good to get out in nature. I think that's helpful. I do a lot of cold water swimming, although I don't do a lot of thinking in that because I'm more mindful and it's very in the moment.
Yeah.
And again, that's another thing to think about is to look for ways of how can you be more mindful and be in the moment. As much as it's good to reflect on process life, it's also good to get yourself into a place where you're more present with people, more present with yourself. And, I find, when I go in the cold water, to be honest, I can't think of much else except the cold water surroundings and well, that's doing it. And so I get really mindful.
Thinking about that. It's like,
well, it's just something I found really, and it's a real good de-stressor and everything else and huge other benefits. But just find something that you found that you can reflect in a place and in a way, and you might just try some things. Journaling is another good way. I think that's a good way of processing life. It's quite active. It's writing down your thoughts, write down what you're grateful for, write down what you've done that day, what you're celebrating. I don't journal as such, but people I know who find journaling really helpful. And if you're into writing things and want to be more active, that's a good way of just getting to the end of the day and just write something down about it could be what you're grateful for, what you celebrate today, what's been quite challenging today, what's the wisdom in that today, and that sort of stuff. Answer some questions to yourself, and you'll start to create real thought. And then good thing about writing it down then is then you can look back over time and go, oh, that's interesting. And then you can start seeing some threads of thought and thinking that could help with your purpose development, your clarity on that. It could help with your thinking on something, on a project. You can see this thread of thinking that comes through, and look at some for you for the future. So journaling is really powerful.
How did you find external or controlling external, reacting to external things, affects the ability to go through that process and be reflective. And from my example, or from my experience, what I did, and this wasn't intentional. Well, the first part was intentional. The result wasn't intentional. In the exceptional effort program that I have, there's a time management module, and as I was writing that and working the development of that, it became, well, if you're in control of your time, you're not reactive. So, and I was looking at going, well, how much of today's life is reactive, especially to do with technology? Your phone rings, you answer it. Your phone, you get a Facebook message, you check it out. Your phone beeps, you check out the text message. Your emails are the same, and we have all sorts of notifications that pop up on our electronic devices with sound effects that attract our attention. And so part of the exceptional effort time management program was, we turn that off. You have a set time in the day where you check your messages, check your emails, those kind of things. And you're in control of it. It's not in control of you. And your day will become much more productive. What I noticed as a result of that for me, because I implemented that as part of what I was doing before I started writing that program, was my peacefulness and my ability to process my thoughts came back to me much more, because my mind wasn't in this state of constantly, oh, there's something over there, oh, there's something over there, I've got to pay attention to this. I'm in my moment more than I was before, with all those alerts. And that's how I live now. Even, there's been times where friends have rung me and I haven't rung back until the next day, not because I haven't cared. It's just I hadn't picked up my phone and looked at, there's a missed call there, because I don't even have it so that it because you get even if it's on silent, it says you have so many missed calls. I have that turned off completely. So I don't know, unless I actually look at the missed calls part of my phone, that someone's rang. But what it did for my mindfulness was tremendous, in the sense of I was able to really spend time thinking about I suppose it sped up. It did speed up the process of being able to reflect. I was able to get into that zone much, much quicker. Is that, from your side of things, do you find all those kind of things that impose on us, or we allow ourselves to impose on ourselves, affects that ability to have that mindfulness?
Totally. I think most of us are not mindful or in the moment at all. I think we're either thinking ahead, whether that's the next hour or the next few months on a project. And there's nothing wrong with planning and thinking ahead. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But often that, if you think too far ahead, you suddenly get anxious because your body goes, oh, I can't control that. It's too far ahead. I have no control. And suddenly you get this anxiety kicking in.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we might do is we go back, and it's good to reflect on things. I'm not saying we shouldn't go back and reflect.
Yes.
But we shouldn't ponder so much on looking back and go, oh, I wish I'd done that. Oh, we should have done that. That's what yes, look for learnings. Yes, look for learnings, reflect, but don't go, oh, I wish I'd done that. Wish I'd done almost the regret bit, because then we get depressed because we can't do anything about it, because it's been and gone. Yeah. And so the motivation is to be more in the moment. I'm on a call with you, I'm fully present. I've got things turned off. I've got no notifications, and you have richer conversations, more meaningful conversations. You experience life better. You're more at peace, because when you're in the moment, you are, surprisingly, which people don't realize, you are fully in control. Yeah. And when you're fully in control, your body, your system goes, oh, I'm at peace, because everything's all right. There's no saber-toothed tiger coming to get us. We are in the moment. And it's looking for, the ways of creating that habit, I guess, of being more in the moment, and that desire and that awareness. But also, when you're in it, it's amazing to be in the moment. And whether that's, using yoga, whether it's using meditation, whether it's using cold water swimming, whatever it is for you, and there's lots of things out there that can help you be more mindful. And there's questions you can ask yourself, all sorts of things to get in the moment. But it goes back to with the whole distraction and control the controllables. I'm like you. The only thing that will signal to me on my phone is a text, because often my girls will text me. But all things like WhatsApp, all the other app stuff, all my notifications are turned off. They're for me to go in and look. They don't even come on the screens. They don't even show up at all. I've seen some people's phones and they look at thinking all these red numbers everywhere. And thinking, oh goodness, that's quite stressful, isn't it? You got all these things to look at. So I go, oh,
it is stressful. That's the thing.
Oh no, because then you feel overwhelmed. Crumbs. So I go, right, I'm going to LinkedIn. Me choosing to go into LinkedIn on my app or on laptop, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'll look and I'll spend some time, dedicate it. That's what I'm going to do. WhatsApp. Often people will WhatsApp me, and it could be hours later, and I go, oh yeah, because I've looked at it because there's no notifications. I say, oh, did you not get my message? Well, I don't have any notifications. If you want to get me, you call me. I'll answer my phone call usually, unless I'm on a call.
Yeah.
Or text me is probably better. All right. And so when I go into WhatsApp, I go because I'm choosing to. And I think it's going back to that really, is look for ways that, if you're getting distracted by these things and they're not helping you, then look at ways of, turning them off and creating time for you. And it goes back to, that also putting time in your diary where you're going to go for a walk around the block.
Yeah.
And, just to, I don't know, you've done a few hours of calls or a meeting, rather than just cracking on the next thing, just take a breath or go downstairs, make a cup of tea, whatever it is, just have a break. And I think it's, we feel with this need to run at pace. And I've learned to actually, we don't need to answer people that quickly. We don't need to, we put that we impose it on ourselves more than others on us really. We might have people obviously expect it, and that's a toxic relationship if that's happening.
Yes.
But I think just go back to what can you control. Actually, I finished this call. I've got 5 minutes. I'm just going to wander outside, get a bit of fresh air, and just go into the garden if you've got a garden or whatever. Or just it doesn't have to be a big thing. I think people think, oh, it has to be a big half hour. No, you can just literally go downstairs, make a cup of tea, go into the garden, 5 minutes, sit outside, and then go back in, and people don't realize being in nature as well will naturally lower your cortisol levels and reduce your stress. So if you do have a garden and a bit of green, or a bit of blue is near the sea, those two things will reduce your stress levels and also cause you to be a bit more in the moment, and help you reflect as well. So it's just almost putting it's a discipline, isn't it? It is discipline. And initially you have to almost put some maybe more diary time in there, more forced time, more forced breaks until it becomes a bit more of a habit. But attaching to all that is making sure that the reason why you're doing all this, the reason why, and that's the key thing, is the bigger reason. So rather than just saying, oh, I need to do this because Julian said I need to do this, it's good for me. Well, actually, no, if I do this, then I become more reflective. I become more reflective. I become more impactful. I become more impactful. I am a better business leader. I'm a better business leader. I'll do and make it quite a big thing. And then also, if I do this and more mindful, then I'm less stressed, less likely to burn out. I'll have more available time. If I'm more present, I'll have more available time for my children, for my family, etc., friendships. I'll have more meaning and make it a bigger reason why you're doing something. So it's not just linked to a very short-term motivation. Actually, it's by doing, it's like people go on diets. Actually, by eating healthily, I'll say means I'll live longer to spend more time with my children. That's far more meaningful than just, so I lose weight and what all the other things. It's actually attaching to a bigger health thing. So when I get to the KFC or the whatever. And I'm
You're going to
not
rub that
bringing
in,
any
aren't you?
judgment here, Damien, at all. It's I go, actually, I'm going to choose. I should do quite like KFC, but I'm going to choose this because it's attached to a bigger reason, because I want to spend more time with my children and be healthy. But so it's, do you know what I mean? More motive in that sense.
Yeah. How do you? I mean, because like from the perspective of similar, we turn devices off. That doesn't take a lot of discipline to turn a device off, because it's not like you have to force yourself not to. The phone's ringing and you've got to force yourself not to look at it. But also, have you had the experience? Because this has happened to me a lot. I've got into this space where I'm more in the zone with what's going on in my life, and well, this is all I can put it down to. So to turn my device off, yes, when my phone rings. My phone is not on vibrate, so I won't feel it. It is on silent. The only way I will see or know that a phone call's happening when it's happening is if I'm looking at the phone. But the amount of times where something important has come through, I've actually just happened to pull my phone out of my pocket at that time to check the time, not for any reason. And the phone has been ringing with the person. I've gone, oh, this call is coming, and I've answered the call, and it's been, what I've been waiting for, or something like that. And that's where that mindfulness comes in. There's something that happens, and Napoleon Hill talks about that in Think and Grow Rich. And there's a number of books where they talk about once you're in that space, these things just happen. And I found for me, turning those devices off makes that happen. Have you had similar sort of things, or you've heard of similar sort of things in that regard?
Yeah, it's almost that your subconscious sort of knows that actually this call, I don't know what it is. I've heard people have that experience where they suddenly need to go and look at their phone, or they need to go and do something, or go downstairs and in the office and and then suddenly meet somebody they didn't realize they were going to meet, or in the office today. And it's that almost that subconscious. And I think it's, I think we're not aware sometimes of how much our body is aware of things, and when we're in the moment, if you're setting your reticular activated system, it will pick up things that you need to pick up to deliver on what you're trying to deliver on. So actually it will give you things that matter to you. And I think the more it's just far more enjoyable life, isn't it? I remember over New Year, I was we were a group of friends, and so there's like 4 families, and me and this other guy were doing a Middle Eastern feast for New Year's Eve, because we both like cooking and stuff. And normally, we set a sort of time, we're gonna eat 7:30, 8 o'clock sort of thing. And normally I'm like literally, let's get on it with time and focus on delivering, because I've set myself a target.
I relate to that. I so much used to live like that.
and so what I did instead, there was no clock in the room, or there was a clock, but it didn't work, because we were staying at it was
right
Airbnb.
Twice a day.
it was yeah, exactly. It was Airbnb, so we it's not our place, so we were away. And so I thought, all right, we had an idea. Obviously, you got to eat at some time, clearly. Yeah, we'll start cooking at 4:30. And we'll eat 7:30, 8, whatever. I just put my phone upstairs. I didn't have a clue, and I just suddenly relaxed, because I didn't have this pressure, and it didn't matter. It wasn't like it's not a project in that sense. And so I was, there's an element of energy and pace, because there's a lot of things to do, but I didn't really matter. And it's funny, first time I've done that, and I really enjoyed what I was doing, because I wasn't aware of time, and then there was distractions and all sorts of stuff going on, and things weren't going quite right, and then I'd forgotten this, and I was trying to work out what I was doing, lots of these different recipes. But I really enjoyed it, because I wasn't looking at my phone thinking, okay, time, okay, so it didn't matter. I can't remember what time we ate in the end. I think we ate about 8 o'clock in the end. I have no idea. But I enjoyed it. I didn't have a pressure. I know that's not always realistic sometimes, but actually, because I was just in the moment, I actually enjoyed that process far better. And I think we need to do a bit more of that. And I say I spent a lot of time over that time without my phone, and just not realizing the time it was late, or, it's 2 o'clock. I think we need to eat now, don't we? Have something to eat. And it didn't, do you know what I mean? And it was just far more enjoyable life. And I know, yes, I was on holiday, and there's an element of relaxation because of that. But I think you need to be a bit more like that. And I think you pick up a lot more, you see more. And in fact, like you go back to you picked up the phone because it mattered for whatever reason. You sensed this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll just pick that up. I don't know what's going on there, but something was happening there probably.
But that's part of being in tune, because I've noticed that a lot. One of the other things I do is I manage a private equity company, and I've noticed, if I've got to choose between two stocks that all look basically similar, like have potential, and I've got to choose it, and being in that moment, a lot of the times it'll be a gut feeling, and a lot of times that gut feeling is right. It's been very rare that it's been wrong. I mean, when it's been wrong, it's still performed because they were both good. But I've generally picked the one that's outperformed the other one, and I can't explain why, other than it just felt right. But again, being in that moment of, in that zone is all I can and put it down to, of being mindful. But because I've trained myself to be mindful, to the extent I think it was funny watching recently when we were traveling with friends. So we had friends over here with us, and we went out. And my son came, and I saw he hadn't picked up his phone. I said, "Oh, you're going to take your phone?" And he goes, "No, I'm not going to take my phone." To that extent that my son doesn't use social media, that I can tell. And when we've gone out, and he's gone out with people that he doesn't really know, that are not in his age group, and he's left his phone. He's deliberately left his phone behind to be in that moment with us, and he's been part of what we've been doing, and that was really interesting. And I wonder about that, because I said I don't do a lot of that in front of him. He sees how I work and things like that, but I said I don't have the alerts. So that's what he has grown up with, because I've lived like that for a long time.
Well, it's role model, isn't it? That's bizarrely, which I think people forget about. Role modeling is the most powerful way to impact others around you.
Yeah.
You can tell people things, you can sort of show what the benefits are, things, but when you role model, I think people forget the power of it, and also the fact that we're role modeling all the time. And as moment you go into somebody's room, you are role modeling, and how you say, what you say, how you act, how you react. The whole thing is people are picking up, and so it's being more intentional and aware of that. The fact that actually I go and people will see what I do and will mimic and take good things from what I'm doing, and especially children as well. And so obviously you've not talked about it, I presume, and you're just doing it. Yeah. And he's just seeing what you do and seeing the impact and the positiveness of it, and therefore going, okay, I'll just do this, and without even you saying anything about it. And I think that's, quite a powerful thing. And I think sometimes we just got to just do stuff sometimes and allow people to sort of observe, and it's quite sort of powerful, really, isn't it? And going back to that, being mindful, I think also the reason why I think you become really, I don't know, perhaps more intuitive, is that your fullest awareness. You've got everything ready to go because you're in the moment. You're not ahead or behind. You're in now. Yeah. And I think you're not in a stress position, because when you're in the moment, you're not stressed.
Correct.
Because you're not. And when we're stressed, we don't make right decisions. We can't think clearly. Things are a bit confusing. We get a bit pace about things. We get anxious. So when you're in that stress position, and that can be a mild stress, I don't think we make the great decisions. And so it's important, and that's perhaps the reason why you made a more intuitive from your perspective, but actually you were probably more aware, and also there was nothing else causing you to be distracted, and therefore made the right decision. I think that's why mindfulness really works, and it's a practice we need to do more of, I think, to try and keep in the moment, which obviously you're doing.
I think that's, because when you talk about, we understand this, like as you just took a drink of water, then you didn't consciously pick up that glass of water. Your conscious mind can't do that. There's so many things your unconscious mind was doing and processing to make that happen. And I wonder how much stuff is outside of our awareness that we go through that process, and using that as an analogy to make other decisions, there's other things where even though we're not consciously aware of it, but there are unconsciously we are aware of it. And again, coming back to Napoleon Hill, he talked about that in Think and Go Rich. I can't remember the term that he used, but it was tapping into that unconscious and allowing that to flow through. The other thing I just wanted to tap into before we run, because I know you've got to head off soon, but you mentioned about bumps in the road, and I know from my perspective, that was something that I really hated. Like, I'd set a goal and then something would go wrong and I'd be really, why has that happened? And I'd get really upset and frustrated with that. And now, and this is part of what I've written in the book, is stealing from Shakespeare, William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Nothing is good, thinking makes it so. And I've switched it completely from a positive, because if you have a positive event, you have to have a negative. That's how that worked. And I've looked at it from a battery perspective. We say a battery has a positive and negative, but the reality is when you connect a battery to something and create a circuit, it doesn't have a positive and negative. It just has a flow, and all the positive and negative is indicating the direction those electrons are flowing. So it could be anything. And so I was thinking about that from that perspective, and from my perspective, I made that change where events, they're just events. They're not good or bad. It's an event, and more often than not, if it's not something that's helping me move towards my goal, it's a signal that I need to learn something. And it's because I have that mindset now, whenever an event happens and it's a bump in the road, so to speak, or used to be a bump in a road that I would get frustrated as. And as you know, when you're frustrated, you don't think it's, well, I don't get frustrated. I just go, that's an event. What do I do now? What do I need to learn now? And from your perspective, have you had a similar sort of thing? Because I know you mentioned earlier about being stressed out about bumps in the road, and having a new process. How do you address bumps in the road?
Yeah, I go back to what I said before, where I look for the wisdom in that moment, and think, okay, what is this telling me? Is it something that I need to pursue and overcome, so to speak, or is it something I need to let go? Or what is the learning of this right now? And so that's simply what I do now. And rather than get into het up, yes, and and there is moments where we go, oh my goodness, what's going on here? We do get, but once you've recoiled back to that and get more back in the moment and go, okay, what is this telling me? And it does go back to that mindfulness piece again, really, and reflecting and looking for the learnings, and that's what resilience is, really, because resilience is not about just getting back up and getting on with things with grit and determination. There's elements of that, and sometimes in life we just got to sometimes keep pushing through. But actually, it's about the learning of whatever that event, however if you do it as a neutral sense or positive or negative. What did I learn from that, and how can I do things differently next time that will help me overcome, steer clear of this? And I think I've become a lot more reflective of that. And I think that's what I always encourage people to do is rather than get into complaining about something or how difficult something is, because the moment you go into that mode, it will always be difficult, and you're just telling yourself it's difficult, and therefore it will be difficult. and is to go, okay, what's the wisdom? Because wisdom is almost quite a neutral word in some ways. It's like, what can this tell me? And I find that really helpful. And I often do it when I'm coaching people. Sometimes when I'm feeling getting stuck, and suddenly I think to myself, what's the wisdom right now? What's the wisdom in this moment? And then suddenly,
I like that.
rather than thinking, oh, I'm stuck with this client, if I keep telling them I'm stuck, I will stay stuck.
Yeah.
And then I just sort of come back and go, what's the wisdom? No, nothing. And then suddenly a thought come in my head and a question, or they'll say something in that moment, and suddenly we move on. And so I don't need to worry about it too much.
I love that. That's a takeaway, a key takeaway from me listening to you talk about resilience and grit, because grit and willpower, that runs out. That you, if you'll keep using that
Yeah.
effort, you're going to get tired. You're going to fail. That's just the stressful. You will get tired. But what you were talking about there with resilience and finding what the wisdom is, I'm linking that to my New Year's resolution of listening more. When you're listening, you're able to listen to what's going on, listen to what that wisdom is,
Mm.
and therefore resilience doesn't have to be an effort. It actually can be quite effortless. That's my takeaway from what you said. That's pretty powerful. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, and we can wind this up because I know you have to run. So.
Yeah, no, interesting. I've sort of, I suppose, enjoyed this conversation. I'm not entirely sure if we met the brief of taking responsibility, but
Well, that's how I was
I,
linking it, because it was like taking charge and responsibility for a year, and it's like, well, the responsibility is having that resilience to come forward, and I'm linking it back to my writing, and I know we haven't got time to talk about it, but that's been really helpful from my perspective. This resilience is not grit; it's about listening to what the wisdom is.
I think what struck me, you said it earlier on, for me was that mindset shift you had in terms of your money side of things, where you said, earn more than I need to spend, and
Yeah.
rather than I haven't got enough, I've got just got to spend this much because I haven't got enough, and it's just that it's sometimes it's just simple mindset shifts or perspectives, and it's the same thing in some ways, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
But one is more liberating and more abundance type of mindset, and one is more, sort of negative and restrictive. And I just struck me that sometimes, personally, I sometimes get into that sort of mode of budget, have this, and rather than actually, no, I just need to think about how I can earn more money, or
Exactly.
how I can do more things, or how can I impact other people better, rather than getting into the where I am right now. And it's that struck me, actually, that mindset shift. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, I know you've got to run, so thank you, Julian. It's been amazing. Looking forward to an amazing year and lots of chats as we move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise, Damon.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes, for others and for you.